I'm frozen in terror, my eyes fixed on my grandfather's naked figure looming in the doorway, his hand beckoning me to come to bed with him. My heart is racing, my mind screaming in silence as I frantically search for an escape. This is the moment that changed everything, the moment that made me realize the true horror of my family's darkest secret. As I pull back from that terrifying moment, I'm reminded of life before the revelation. My family seemed normal, or at least as normal as any other. My grandfather, a man I once looked up to, was a pillar of our family gatherings. My mom, a middle child, and her siblings would often share stories of their childhood, but there was always a sense of unease, a feeling that something was off. My grandmother, a kind and gentle soul, was the glue that held our family together. But even she had a troubled past, a history of physical abuse at the hands of my grandfather. My mom would often tell me about how my aunt, the oldest sibling, would take the beatings for her, protecting her from the wrath of their father. As the years went by, the family's dynamics began to shift. My grandmother's health began to decline, and she was forced to move in with my family for a few months. It was during this time that we discovered the true extent of my grandfather's cruelty. He would often neglect her, refusing to take her to the hospital when she needed medical attention. My mom would later tell me that she believed my grandfather had switched their medication, intentionally trying to harm my grandmother. The thought sent chills down my spine, and I couldn't help but wonder how someone could be so cruel to their own spouse. My aunt, who had been a victim of my grandfather's abuse, finally found the courage to speak out. She confessed to my mom that my grandfather had molested her when she was a child, making her get in bed with him when everyone else was out of the house. My mom was devastated, realizing that she had been oblivious to the horrors that her sister had endured. But what really shook me to my core was when my mom told me that my aunt had been sexually abused by 2 other male family members as well. It was a shocking revelation, one that made me realize that my family's problems ran far deeper than I had ever imagined. As I reflect on my own experiences, I'm reminded of the incident that changed everything for me. I was 15 years old, and my grandfather had driven me to his house after a family party. My grandmother had stayed behind, and I was left alone with him. As I was getting ready for bed, he walked into the room, completely naked, and started masturbating. I was horrified, my mind racing with fear as I frantically tried to process what was happening. He told me to come to bed with him, just like I used to when I was little, but I refused. I locked the door, my heart pounding in my chest, and messaged a random person on the Amino app, desperate for someone to talk to. The next few years were a blur of anxiety and fear. I stopped going to my grandparents' house, and I avoided family gatherings. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, trapped in a world where I couldn't trust anyone. My mom would often ask me why I didn't want to spend time with my grandparents, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. I felt like I was carrying a heavy burden, a secret that I couldn't share with anyone. But now, as I've grown older, I've come to realize that I'm not alone. My aunt's confession has given me the courage to speak out, to share my own story of abuse and trauma. I want to warn others about my grandfather, to tell them about the evil that lurks behind his charming facade. I want to make sure that no one else has to endure what my aunt and I have gone through. But as I prepare to tell my story, I'm met with a harsh reality. The Amino app is gone, and with it, all the evidence I had. I'm left with nothing but my words, my testimony against a man who has destroyed so many lives. As I look back on everything that has happened, I'm filled with a sense of regret and longing. I wish I had spoken out sooner, that I had been brave enough to tell my family about what had happened to me. But I'm also filled with a sense of determination, a desire to make sure that my grandfather is held accountable for his actions. I want to make sure that he can't hurt anyone else, that he's brought to justice for the evil he has committed. The question is, will my family believe me? Will they finally cut ties with my grandfather, or will they continue to enable his behavior? I can only hope that my story will be enough, that it will be the catalyst for change. But as I wait for their response, I'm left with a haunting question: what if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm lying, that I'm just trying to cause trouble? The thought sends a chill down my spine, and I'm reminded of the fear that I've lived with for so long. As I navigate this complex web of emotions and memories, I'm reminded of the power of truth and courage. I'm reminded that speaking out against abuse and trauma is never easy, but it's always necessary. And I'm reminded that I'm not alone, that there are others out there who have gone through similar experiences. So I'll continue to speak out, to share my story with anyone who will listen. And I'll hope that someday, justice will be served, and my grandfather will be held accountable for his actions. Was I right to stay silent for so long, or should I have spoken out sooner?
If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Drop your verdict in the comments below, subscribe for new stories every single day, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one.